Ever wish a podcast would explain how to get better faster from the standpoint of longevity, biohacking, and personalized functional medicine? Co-hosts Dr. Jason Bradley and James Chester, along with executive producer Rachel Bradley, bring you the Get Better Faster podcast. Their mission is radically simple: to revolutionize health by connecting people with the experts, technologies, and protocols that mainstream medicine ignores. Because people deserve to get better faster.
All right. Hello, Get Better Faster Nation. I am Dr. Jason Bradley, and along with my co-host, the one and the only James Chester, and our incredible executive producer, Rachel Bradley, we want to welcome you to another exciting episode of the Get Better Faster podcast. Today, we're joined by one of the most courageous voices in medicine, a man who risked everything to tell the truth when the world needed it the most. Dr. Peter McCullough is an internationally recognized cardiologist, internist, and epidemiologist with over 1,000 peer-reviewed publications under his belt and more than 700 citations in the National Library of Medicine. He's testified before the U.S. Senate, the House of Representatives, and the European Parliament on matters of public health. But here's what makes today's conversation so important. Back in 2021, when Dr. McCullough first raised concerns about COVID vaccine safety, specifically heart inflammation in young people, he was censored, fact-checked, and faced professional attacks that cost him his board certifications. Fast forward to 2025, and the FDA has just mandated expanded warning labels for both Pfizer and Moderna vaccines for the exact heart risks he warned about us years ago. Dr. McCullough didn't just predict the problems, he developed solutions. As chief science officer of the wellness company, he created the world's first published spike protein detoxification protocol, helping thousands of people dealing with long COVID and post-vaccination symptoms reclaim their health. Today, he's going to share his groundbreaking base spike detoxification protocol and show us how to take back control of our health in a world that desperately needs real solutions. Dr. McCullough, it's an honor and welcome to the show.
Wow, Dr. Bradley, I can't wait to get better faster. So many people need our help.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, to me, it's the second time I've had a chance to have you on a show, Dr. McCullough, and I think that we're always figuring out new ways to introduce great information to audiences that need it. But as Dr. Bradley introed you, you were one of the first prominent people to go out there and say, hey, this COVID thing has some safety concerns. When did you see in your practice that was a concern that made you want to speak out about it, despite knowing that there were some professional risks?
In 2020, Scott Atlas at Stanford and I was at Baylor at the time. We were invited by The Hill, which is a widely read political journal in Washington, to write a series of opinion editorials. I wrote one every month through the pandemic in 2020. By August of 2020, I wrote an op-ed, and the title of it was The Great Gamble of the COVID-19 Vaccine Development Program. So when did I voice my concern? August of 2020. When did the vaccines come out? December of 2020. So you're talking to the only public figure who put it in writing in the world that I can see, who actually put it in writing for the entire world to read, that this was concerning. These were the genetic code, in different formats for the lethal part of the virus, the spike protein. It was the worst idea ever to use genetic code that we can't turn off once it's injected into the body and have unlimited production of the spike protein. And boy, was I right.
You absolutely were right. And I'm sure in some way it feels a little vindication that we have some warnings, coming out now, and they've changed the recommendations and the boosters and who should get the shots and all of those things. But walk us through what it was like when you were presenting that information to save lives, to voice concerns, and you were completely poo-pooed.
Well, by November of 2020, I testified in the U.S. Senate. I had the very first protocol on how to treat patients. We already had data in thousands of patients in South Central California. George Freed brought that forward, published it in a monograph. And our Senate hearing was wiped off of C-SPAN. I mean, this is the first message to the world that we can treat COVID-19, and it was wiped clean off of a government broadcast on YouTube. This was stunning. Now, years later, it was revived. It was revived in 2025. It was suppressed for 5 years. We rolled into the pandemic. I was neutral when they came out. My patients were asking me, should I take it? I said, I don't know. I never advised anyone to take it. I didn't take it myself. 19% of Americans didn't take it. Thank the Lord. But I was neutral. But by March of 2021, it was clear. We had about 1,600 people who had died taking these shots. Pretty quickly after taking them, I testified in the Texas Senate. I voiced my concerns, and wow, that's when the hammer came down.
Yeah, it sure did. And I just want to back up just for a minute. For folks that don't understand mRNA technology, can you walk us through why that's different than previous iterations of vaccines that we've used throughout the years?
Prior vaccines are either the live attenuated virus, so the virus that's crippled, it just presents, and turns out those are, pretty effective vaccines. Then there are antigen-based vaccines, which is just the protein that would be like the Pneumovax vaccine, for instance, or Haemophilus influenza vaccine. But never have we taken this synthetic genetic code for part of a virus and then inserted that in the human body. And so messenger RNA is fully synthetic. It's called pseudo-uridinated. So the human body can't break it down. It's loaded into lipid nanoparticles. That's Pfizer and Moderna, which is 94% of people who took the shots. It goes into the body. It's distributed everywhere. And then it harnesses the cell's own ribosomes to start producing this lethal protein. And it produces the protein that expressed on the cell surface. The body attacks itself. It goes into the bloodstream. We have one of my patients in research now, 3.2 years after the shots, he still has circulating Pfizer in his bloodstream and the spike protein.
So, what's one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about the spike protein and its persistence in the body?
The CDC said that, listen, the spike protein is harmless. I think that's still on its website. That's not the case. The spike protein is damaging. There's about 4,000 papers showing spike protein damage in the human body. It damages blood vessels. It gets into the heart, causes blood clots, can also cause bleeding, inhibits tumor suppressor factors for advancing cancers, incites autoimmunity. I mean, the spike protein was intentionally engineered in a Chinese biosecurity lab. This has now been fully revealed in U.S. House of Representatives proceedings. Can you imagine a protein that was designed to be, create a virus to make it infectious and lethal? The genetic code for that was actually injected, intentionally in the form of vaccine to human beings.
Go ahead, Dr. Jason.
Okay. It's mind-boggling to me. As a physician myself, I was in the same situation. I mean, nobody, at least from my end, we didn't know what was going on. We were down in Austin at a mastermind in February, and we're heading back, and there was something was going on in February. And, we just took the position of trying to watch the data, talk about, as much science as we could, but really be taking a very cautious approach instead of jumping in. I'm one of those 19%. Our kids are one of those 19%. My wife's one of those 19%. However, and I want to differentiate that between the J&J vaccine that came out. Our daughter got accepted into Edinburgh, come on, the 18th ranked university in the world. I mean, she's smart as Dickens, right? And they had a requirement to get the vaccine, and she didn't do it. She didn't do it. And then finally she did it, and she did with the J&J because I was worried about the mRNA. And then 2 weeks later, they dropped that mandate. Tell me about the J&J vaccine for my own sanity compared to
the J&J vaccine was taken by about 5% of Americans who took a shot. And that's an adenoviral vector. So this is, in a sense, a virus that it's given the genetic code for the spike protein. The virus comes in the body, invades some cells, replicates, and actually those cells produce the spike protein. But it's limited. The adenovirus can't stay forever. So it's been my experience that there's a big blast of spike protein. And then beyond that, it's just a matter of the patient's getting the spike protein out of the body. So very different than Pfizer, where you're stuck with the genetic code for years. The safest vaccine of all is virtually never mentioned. That was about 1% of people took Novavax. Novavax was just 5 micrograms of the spike protein. I've always said if I had a gun held to my head, and many of us were afraid that was going to happen, I would have taken Novavax.
Yeah, it's super interesting too. And I know that even with her, she's very healthy kid, and she had a massive, massive response that I was super worried about following that vaccine. It was her first one ever. She'd never been vaccinated. So that's the very first vaccine. Yeah. So it was, and she had a massive response to it. So I think hopefully, I don't know. This is, okay, let me start that whole sentence over. I assume that most people see the same things that I do in the news feeds, which is young athletes and young people that are completely healthy dropping dead. I mean, they're literally dropping dead of heart issues, heart events, cardiac events. Are you seeing this now? Here we are in 2025, and I know we have long haul that I want to jump into in detoxifying. But have you, in your practice or in your experience in your research, seen these spike protein responses with the cardiomyopathies and other cardiac events affecting younger people as in a larger percentage, or is it just kind of everybody?
Well, there are 3 prospective studies where they measure everything at baseline, give the shots, and measure everything afterwards. We're talking blood tests,
Mhm.
EKGs, ultrasounds, Mansugian, Bergen, and then there's a Pfizer paper. Believe it or not,
Hmm.
Pfizer did a study. And the answer is it's somewhere around 2% of people who take the shots sustain, visible heart damage clinically. And then so that's that first big blast, and that should be over with now because no one's taking the shots. The question is the next cardiac arrest now 4 years later, is that related? And then the paper was published in JCC by Koizumi and colleagues from Japan. People took 3 and 4 doses of messenger RNA, and they found vaccine microscars in the heart of people who have cardiac arrest. So I'm greatly worried, in the absence of anything else, that the next cardiac arrest in a vaccinated person could be related. Now, I'm encouraging the family, if they get a biopsy or sadly, if they get an autopsy, to get the heart stained for spike protein, and they can do what's called reverse qPCR and actually detect Pfizer or Moderna in the heart.
Hmm.
I just got called by a doctor in Virginia in the last half an hour, and there's a young man who took 3 shots. Then he had COVID after that this year, and now he's in the hospital in heart failure with a very, very weakened heart. He's needing every drug under the sun. And I just had a patient from Canada like that yesterday who's now recovered. And the point is, yes, the vaccines plus COVID infection, I think usually the vaccines first, then COVID infection or another infection, can incite a fulminant myocarditis that results in sudden death or heart failure.
Well, I want to jump in quickly too, because I'm the non-doctor on today's conversation panel. And I'm just curious about, you said this 19% of people did not choose to get inoculated for this COVID with the vaccines. Is We live in a human petri dish, right? Like we're a microbiome as a culture and as a people. Are you finding that people that are, I don't even know how to better say this, but that are like sexually active with other people that took the shots? Are you finding that they're getting the spike proteins also? And are you finding that is crossing the barrier like a STD into people's lives? Like, is that something that's real?
Yeah, it's never been demonstrated, but you may want to have on your show Dr. Helene Benoun from INSERM in France. She's studied the most on this idea of shedding. I think shedding is probably real, particularly when there's high concentrations of messenger RNA and spike, and let's say the first 6 months after the vaccine. It's possible. It's certainly possible. People are probably exchanging spike protein back and forth all the time, but a critical paper was published by Barham and colleagues demonstrating if you've just had COVID and no vaccine and you have some symptoms, the antibodies against the spike protein, which are a proxy for how much spike protein exposure there's been, they're around 2,000 or so. In my experience, less than 1,000 is a good number. Now, those who've taken the shots, it's about 11,000. 11,000. If I have somebody who hasn't taken the vaccine, but their spike antibodies are way up there, maybe they have gotten a lot of exposure
Hmm.
through shedding. I get a lot of young people contact me on Instagram. And normally I say, Dr. McCullough, I've really gotten into this dating relationship with somebody of the opposite sex. And I'm worried about shedding. And I said, well, I give some reasonable response, but I said, we always advise safe sex practices. Then there's usually a pause or just kind of okay, a little disappointment there with that comment. But people should be cautious.
Well, I just say that because it's a big problem for a lot of people wanting to be intimate with people that have had the shots and people that didn't take the shots, and I just think it's a huge conversation that a lot of people aren't having. So knowing that you were going to be on our show today, I felt like we had to bridge that topic. But I know Dr. Bradley wants to talk to you about the detox and the testing and how your base spike protein detox is actually helping people recover from these types of problems so they don't have long-term symptomatology and dysfunction.
That's my question.
That's it. Well, listen, we wanted to find a solution. I've tried every drug under the sun. I'm a drug prescribing regular doctor, and I was not making any headway on these spike protein problems. We could kind of cover up the symptoms, or treat with a blood thinner for the blood clot, or treat for autoimmunity, but we weren't handling the problem. And then we followed the work of Dr. Tanakawa in Japan and work of others, and became convinced that nattokinase, which is a fermented product of soy or chickpeas, that has proteolytic, fibrinolytic properties that actually degrades the spike protein in cell lysate and intact cell models. That was very solid. Bromelain, which is a family of enzymes derived from pineapple, that also degrades the spike protein, and these get absorbed and into the bloodstream. Lumbrokinase may do it, but there's questions about whether or not it really survives the GI tract and gets into the bloodstream. Sereptase may do that as well, but for sure, we had data with nattokinase and bromelain. And then curcumin is just an available supplement derived from turmeric that randomized trials showed it blocked the spike protein. We went on to human randomized trials there. So that's the formulation. When I first published this in 2023, the proposal to do this, then we started doing it in my practice, immediately on Instagram. I mean, immediately there was a community message that got put up there. It says, this doesn't work. And the question is, how did they know immediately that this proposal was not going to work? So here's my point. Actually, when I saw that, I was happy. I said, you know what? The people who are running the censorship engines out there, they know when we hit an important discovery, because hydroxychloroquine, which is modestly effective, it was intensely censored. Ivermectin, intensely censored. So was steroids, colchicines. All the things that we used that worked were censored. Now, if I would have said something ridiculous like, drink cucumber juice and that'll handle the spike protein, there would be no censorship at all. So we got censored on McCullough protocol-based spike protein detoxification. We actually worked with others, and we formed the wellness company. Our product is the ultimate spike detox. It became the most widely used product in the space. We copyrighted my name for accountability reasons, but we intentionally did not patent it because we knew so many people needed this, and there's so many different manufacturers, and we wanted to enable the most rapid innovation. So if you go on Google right now and type in spike detox, you get millions of hits. You go on Amazon, you find millions of, not millions, but many arrays of products of the same idea. You need this has a total of 6 ingredients in it, but nattokinase, bromelain, and curcumin are the main ones. And what we found is this is needed. This product is like 2 capsules twice a day on an empty stomach under doctor's supervision, 4 capsules twice a day, empty stomach. It's needed for about a year, and you will see a 20% or greater drop in the spike antibodies, bigger drops, better. And invariably, the long COVID syndrome resolves, tenosis, numbness, post-exertional malaise. We've seen, we do this in conjunction to blood thinners, and blood clots finally resolve. So it's key. It's supported now by our first original 2 papers, and now there's several papers from all over the world showing the same thing.
Yeah. And just following up with that too, when I think about, colchicine and hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, those are prescriptive agents. But we're talking about nattokinase and bromelain and curcumin. I mean, I don't want to debase it to this, but they're supplements, right? And ultimately, they've been around for a really long time, and they're very, very safe. I guess my question is, why would they be suppressing supplements? I mean, it's a strange, I know the answer, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, listen, this came out early on. You know what was the most suppressed supplement in 2020? Vitamin D. Every study with vitamin D was positive. There were 7 randomized trials showing vitamin D was suppressive. It actually was protective against COVID. Vitamin D levels correlated with better outcomes. I mean, the data on vitamin, and it was actively suppressed. The Federal Trade Commission went after one of the vitamin D company CEOs, Eric Naputi. You know what else was suppressed? Nasal sprays and gargles. No harm there. Federal Trade Commission went after the Clear company, Cofix RX, the Neomed. They went after him. Actually, they sued Nate Jones, the CEO of Clear, him personally and his company, and they tied him up forever in court. And then finally, they just dropped everything. So I'm telling you, everything that worked in COVID and now in long COVID has been suppressed.
Well, I know we have a new administration. They've been in for several months now. And I think, I don't want to make my own statements on it, but I'm looking for your take on how we're doing organizationally with the new administration and helping clear up some of the damage that's been done.
It's tough because the government is such a giant organization. So even if you have leadership at the top, and I used to be chief scientific officer of a huge health system, so I know what it's like. It can take months to just get a meeting with some of the departments. So even if you change the leadership at the top, change is slow. I mean, look at the CDC. The CDC has right now we have an interim director. So we've gone through directors almost every 2 years, but the CDC has 12,000 employees, a budget of $9 billion. They don't see a single patient. They don't operate a single clinic or hospital. I mean, literally, the organization is that big, and they largely just provide advice to doctors. Do we need 12,000 highly paid scientists to do that? You can imagine they become entrenched.
Hmm.
And, the entire CDC was charged with getting everyone vaccinated. They were told to do that. And the CDC has not been forthcoming on the shortcomings of the COVID vaccine. That's the problem. So you could have a new person on the top, but you have all these layers. And the same is true at the National Institutes of Health, and the same is true at the FDA. So this is what I'd say is new leadership, great. But the thing to do is now start to have what we used to have in medicine is called Bethesda meetings. They need to call all the chiefs of medicine, hospital CEOs, all the people into Washington for probably very frequent meetings. And we need to go through these topics like we're talking about now. Lessons learned about the suppression of early treatment for COVID. What happened? Again, with presentation of data, what worked and what didn't. COVID-19 vaccines, safety, and the failure of efficacy, where we are. And the government could hold those meetings and people would show up. And you know why? Because their funding is dependent on it. You could send out a letter from CMS or from NIH and say, listen, show up. Otherwise, we're going to have a discussion about your grant funding to your organization. No, they should do that. I mean, we're 9 months late, and that's an obvious thing. If I was running things at the top, that'd be the first thing I would do. And we'd start looking at the information because right now, the doctors and the nurses and others, they don't want to face the truth.
I just want to say too, following again when all the confusion in 2020, as things were, coming out, so to speak, it was confusing for everybody. I mean, even doctors, and I was charged with just stay calm and present the facts and just try to make sense of it. And my wife and I were doing, nearly daily, daily broadcasts on whatever we could, find to talk about just to keep that level of calm. But here's my question. I thought, because I'm left brain science guy, it made sense when you're talking, when your studies were coming out, when your thoughts were coming out, it made sense. The spike proteins made sense. The mRNA questions made sense. And to me, as a physician, I thought other physicians would also think logically and with their left brain. But it seems like that's not what happened at all. In fact, I was shocked that some of my colleagues that prior to the COVID, pandemic or whatever we want to call it, prior to that, these were people that questioned the authority, they were always questioning. And for some reason, when COVID came out, they stopped questioning. I'm wondering, and I'm in the alternative medicine sphere. I have been for, the last 2.5 decades. You were in the trenches. What happened? Like, why did doctors stop questioning and pushing? I mean, when did the science become settled? What happened?
Well, a few of us questioned and a few of us pushed, but this was the first big stress test of our life. Remember, everything else is chronic disease. And, somebody can be brave and challenge a narrative in a meeting. And it's chronic disease. It just kind of pokes along. I was working in the chronic disease. This was like a war. And suddenly, somebody had to step up and do something. And, we've never gone through this drill in medicine. We've never had, any fire drill. Now, it turns out the government was doing pandemic preparedness planning for years on this. They said, well, if there's a pandemic and this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to message this, all this has come out. And there's some wonderful books, COVID-19 and the Global Predators by Peter Bregan, and then my first book, Courage to Face COVID-19, and Robert F. Kennedy's book on Anthony Fauci, and actually Rand Paul's book, Deception. I recently met with Rand Paul about his book. So, listen, the government was going through plane exercises, but, I was at several big medical centers. We never had an exercise of, okay, there's going to be a virus. It's going to come from China. This is how we're going to do it. And no, this was a first big stress test. And boy, did people fail that stress test.
Yeah, they did.
And I think actually a lot of it was driven by fear. I'll never forget in the American Journal of Cardiology, which was edited, in my office at Baylor, there was a paper that came in memoriam, and it was listing all the Italian doctors in Milan who had died during the pandemic, listed them by name. We knew some of them. And, it turned out they were older and what have you. But I gotta tell you, that article, I still remember that injected fear into us. Like, oh my Lord, for the first time, our occupation could actually end our lives. And I think a lot of doctors said, forget it. I'm shutting my clinic. I'm not going to treat any COVID patients. The infectious disease doctors, they were all called to the inpatient service, and they didn't even see the patients. They were allowed just to go on Zoom. Even we had fellows in the hospital. They literally just kind of, went on the computer and said, well, let me look at the EKG. So the patients really weren't seen and examined. There was tremendous fear. And I think that's what kicked it off. And then when they were told, listen, you don't have to treat COVID. You just have to kind of just be in the background. That people will come in the hospital and they'll deal with it when they get there. And then you just have to take a vaccine in December of 2020. The doctors lined up for that, and so did the nurses. So they essentially, this preparation for mass vaccination using fear and all the other tactics, it worked.
It was stronger than religious dogma. I know that we're wrapping up here shortly, but I have one question. Is I know that you're privy to a lot of inside information when it comes to the health and well-being of America. You said that you've never seen stress like this put upon the practitioners and our society. Is there something else looming that we need to be aware of? Because I get your emails, your wellness kits, and the preparedness kits. I know you guys are selling those things, and are there looming aspects that we think that something else is going to lambaste us?
Well, we've had two starts at them. So we've had monkeypox. Remember, Biden declared a national monkeypox emergency. We bought huge amounts of monkeypox vaccines. And there it really became a war in the media. I was on national TV saying, listen, we can understand this. It became a sexually transmitted disease. It's limited to a certain population. Prior smallpox vaccination was preventive. So it really just took good scholarship and communication. And we settled down the nation on monkeypox. And ultimately, the Biden administration dropped it. Now, our CDC did none of that. That was done by McCullough Foundation, kind of the people in my circle. And fortunately, we have enough exposure on national TV to do that. And then the next one was bird flu. That, we got to the point again of in Europe, they bought bird flu vaccines for humans. And again, we got way ahead of that in the media and said, no, this is mild in humans. It's treatable. It looked like it was gain of function research that came out of the USDA poultry laboratory. So, and again, the USDA never denied that. And before you know it, we got ahead of this. And a wellness company just stepped in and said, listen, we're going to provide free bird flu kits to every farmer in America. So don't be fearful of this. So basically, the wellness company ended the bird flu crisis.
Good for you.
So, I got to tell you, our agencies, which have billion-dollar budgets so far, they haven't directly managed the problem. They haven't researched these problems, and they certainly haven't used the power of the media to kind of guide us through this. They just kind of allow a crisis in the media to amplify. And, what could be around the corner? Marburg virus, maybe another Ebola virus. They interviewed Peter Daszak in the Senate, and he said they have so many samples of more virulent viruses in the Wuhan lab. So believe it or not, it could be another break in the Wuhan lab. We've got about 14 level 4 biosecurity labs in the United States. One of them is in Galveston, Texas. There are hundreds of leaks. These things are not secure at all. And so, I think the next thing could be a domestic lab leak of, maybe some other virus that is a problem. So we need to counsel our lawmakers to. I don't think these biosecurity labs are safe. I think we should shut them down. Trump's trying to reduce the funding to them, but the other foundations can fund these. Universities is very lucrative research. It doesn't have adequate oversight, and the leaks are just too common. And sooner or later, someone's going to get hurt. Maybe the next epicenter is Galveston, Texas.
I agree with all of that. Thank you for sharing that. And also, just to repeat this gain of function, in my head, that means weaponization, and just so for people that are listening, it's a nice way of saying weaponizing a virus against humans. We have a couple minutes. Dr. McCullough, thank you. Is there anything that we can do as a society to prevent whatever the next thing is going to be? What can we do to prepare our bodies to be the best, most efficient machines to fight that off?
Well, everybody needs to get fit and in shape. Like Jason Bradley, you can see he's in him and his wife and his family are models. Those in the naturopathic field in general, just they practice what they preach. I try to do it myself, but I think if we're going to get hit with something, it's going to be an airborne viral respiratory illness. And what you need to know there is the nasal sprays and gargles have the best track record for sure. And everything works. You just need to do it on a twice-a-day basis. So my favorite is Xlear, Xlear, a nasal spray, and the companion gargle is Spry, but you could use iodine-based like Immune Mist or Neomed, Betadine, or even hypertonic saline, colloidal silver. They all work, but you have to do something twice a day. When you inhale a virus on an airplane, and it's in your nose for about 7 days, you don't know it. It's just replicating. Then it drains to the throat. Then you get a sore throat. Then you know you have something, but you're 7 days behind. The only way to disrupt that virus and knock it down somewhat to let your immune system finish it off is a nasal spray and gargle. Super important. I do it twice a day religiously. I've interviewed people for my show. They never had COVID. They've gone 5, 10, 15 years. One guy, 20 years, no respiratory illnesses. I really think that is the ticket. If we did that, and lots of us do it, it could be a game changer.
I just want to say that I think a number of years ago, a very wise man said an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I think that you're another wise man saying the same thing. I know we're out of time. Dr. McCullough, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time today. Keep up the good work. And everybody should be subscribing to his Substack, the Foundation Substack, and get on his email list. It's invaluable information that could literally save your life and save the life of your family.
And I'm going to close out quickly. I have a postscript that I read here just to say thank you to everybody. Dr. McCullough, this has been absolutely eye-opening and potentially life-changing for our listeners. Appreciate you making time today with Dr. Jason Bradley and myself. For our Get Better Faster Nation listening right now, if someone you love is struggling with lingering symptoms after COVID, dealing with unexplained fatigue, brain fog, chest pain, or heart issues after vaccination, or you're concerned about spike protein in your body, Dr. McCullough's base spike protein detoxification protocol could be the answer that you've been searching for. We're talking about the only spike detox protocol published in the U.S. medical literature, developed by one of the most published cardiologists in America. The ultimate spike detox from the wellness company contains pharmaceutical grade nattokinase, bromelain, and curcumin, the 3 exact component formula that Dr. McCullough talked about today and uses in his own clinical practice. Here's what makes this special. This isn't just a fly-by-night supplement company. This is a physician-developed, science-backed protocol that's already helped thousands of people worldwide reduce spike protein antibodies and reclaim their health. Remember, nobody's coming to save you, but solutions like this can prove you can save yourself. Dr. McCullough, thank you for your courage, your integrity, and never backing down from the truth. The world needs more physicians like you. And to all of our Get Better Faster Nation, thank you for listening and your continued support. You know the best way to show your support is share this episode with somebody who needs to hear this message, someone dealing with long COVID, someone who's been dismissed by their doctors, someone who's been searching for answers. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode and get the behind-the-scenes insights we've got coming your way. We've got more incredible guests lined up who are going to blow your mind with real solutions for reclaiming your health, your happiness, and your life. Until next time, keep questioning everything and keep getting better faster. Bradley, thanks for being my co-host today. And I know that Dr. McCullough has exited interview room, but thank you, Dr. McCullough, for being our esteemed guest today. And we will see you guys on the next episode.
Yeah, thanks, James. See everybody next time.
Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Get Better Faster podcast. Join the movement and visit getbetterfasterpodcast.com to find all our episodes, micro content, and resources to help you and your family get better faster.